It's the sequel to Iron Flame. Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. Hang on. I'm always so nervous when I have to describe these plots. This is gonna be a bit sloppy in terms of details, but everybody just stick with me. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Grace, and it has been a minute since I have been on camera. I feel like the last few months have been almost a blur just because of the holidays, but then I was also directing a play. It has been great, but a whirlwind. So I'm happy to be back and with some new content. I've been percolating a lot on, I don't even know if that's really the right word that I should use. I've been pondering on the content that I want to create this year and have just been kind of going over my personal goals and everything going into 2025. I'm really excited about posting some book content. I love reading. I have to say I am very average when it comes to reading. I don't like speed through a dozen books a month. Like I'm pretty slow, but I love them. I'm involved in a book club, and I also occasionally will go to a book club like within my town at our local bookshop. So I kind of dabble here and there. I'm really excited to just like dive in. For today, I have my favorite books from last year in 2024, and then I also have my January TBR all lined up, and we're gonna see if I can get through them or at least kind of start on that. So my plan is to post more book content. I'd really like to get to the point to post one book content a week or maybe one every other week. And then the other type of content, I want to do more home stuff. We are about to move into our new house and I'm so excited. I have so many ideas when it comes to decorating and organization and everything like that. So if you could only see my office and apartment right now, I mean, it looks turned upside down because we are supposed to move in, I guess from now, hopefully in about a month. Everything's a little out of sorts, but that's okay. It's all good things. But that is my plan, to have home, lifestyle, more content like that once a week, and then a book video once a week, or kind of have them alternating every week. We're gonna see how much I can actually like commit to. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into my favorite books from last year. Okay, so one of my favorite books from last year was One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. I'm also not the greatest when it comes to pronunciations, and it's actually hysterical that I like romantacy now, because half of the things that they say, like the words and names they use, like in my brain, it's like, and I just like skip over it. But I get the gist, you know, like I'm not the biggest like attention to detail kind of girl, but I get the whole plot and the whole, you know. Anyway, One Dark Window was so good. I saw another YouTuber talk about this, but she was in England. And now I kind of see it all over the place here in the States, or at least at like our kind of big box bookstores. But no one I know really has read it except from like maybe another friend of mine who really loved the series too. But it's the first book in a duology. I'll get to the second one in a second. This plot was just kind of unlike anything I'd read before. So it follows Elspeth, who lives in this kingdom, and there is magic within the kingdom, but it's in the form of these cards, like a deck of cards essentially. And each card has a different power that it yields. And the only way to access that power is to tap the card, I think 3 times, and, you know, absorb it, I guess. What's cool about this is that when Elspeth was very young, she absorbed the power of this one card, not realizing that, I feel like I'm not explaining this right. Hang on. There's this deck of cards, and that is how magic is really accessed in the kingdom, is by obtaining the cards and using the magic that they hold. But also within this kingdom, there is this mist, and kind of, I guess, more on the, like it's surrounding the kingdom. If you go into the mist, basically you become infected, or it can kind of make you go mad a little bit. And when Elspeth was young, she became infected, but not realizing like what it really did to her. She ended up absorbing one of cards, essentially she calls it the Nightmare. And so a monster basically lives inside her brain. That sounded gross. A monster basically lives inside her head, but no one knows. That's the backstory. Okay, so she basically meets this highwayman, not realizing that it's like the king's nephew, and he is on a quest to basically cause treason and abolish things within like their government. And so it's this whole thing, and she doesn't, and what's really neat about it is that she has, like I said, the monster inside her head. So you read it and the monster like talks to her and everything, but no one else is aware of it. And it can kind of give her certain abilities unbeknownst to anyone else. Like she's a very meek girl, and then she can like do all these cool things. Anyway, that was not a good synopsis, but that's what you sign on for when you are starting to watch these videos. It's really good. I really enjoyed it. That really is just a very brief synopsis. So I hope that you actually do read it and that I didn't butcher it too much. Okay, so now moving on to a more simple plot. Clearly describing romantasy or fantasy books is my forte. So I really loved Wild Love by Elsie Silver. This was my first Elsie Silver book that I read. I enjoyed it a lot. It is very much a page turner in terms of like if you like kind of steamy, fun romance. I had never read the billionaire kind of trope, and it's exactly what it sounds like if you're not aware. Basically, there's this billionaire and he falls in love with a girl who's not a billionaire. Billionaire comes back to hometown where he sees his old childhood friend. She actually starts working for him. She's kind of down on her luck and she is needing a job. Through all of that, they find out that they really always had feelings for each other, and I'm sure you can kind of figure out how the book goes from there. It was really cute, really good, kind of steamy, which was really fun, but I really enjoyed it, and I'm excited to read more Elsie Silver this year. Another book I read, this is also kind of more of a, I guess, fantasy, but it's not fantasy in the terms of like dragons and stuff. It says it at the top, it says delightfully bonkers, and I feel like that's the best way to put it, and that is the Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels. I had a blast reading this. It is so cute and so much fun. I'm just gonna read you like the little top of the back. It says, a prim and proper lady thief must save her aunt from a crazed pirate and his dangerously charming henchman in this fantastical historical romance. I really enjoyed it. This is by India Holton, and it was just so much fun. It's really fun to read like in the springtime. I think that's when I read it. I like to read based on seasons kind of, or at least I used to, and so this is a really good spring read. I'm moving on to 2 audiobooks now that I absolutely devoured, and they helped me get into loving audiobooks. So the first one is Heartless Hunter, and we read this for my book club, and I loved it. I believe it is young adult, but it was really fun. It's also fantasy or romantasy. So basically it follows this girl who is in this like coven of witches. Within this story, witches are very frowned upon. They are not good and they are not liked. Like magic in general is considered bad, you know? So basically this girl is undercover as a witch. No one really knows. And the way that witches access their power in these books is through blood, which is kind of gross. Whenever they use blood, it leaves scars. It can just become very obvious if you are a witch. She has her own way of accessing like blood that I will not describe on here. And so she kind of works undercover to like save these witches in her coven, and she is like seen in society as like this big socialite. This one witch hunter is like trying to figure out who it is, and they call her the Crimson Moth. He suspects it's her, but does not know. She is trying to find one specific witch, like within her coven. It was like her grandmother's last dying wish. Her grandmother's last dying wish for her granddaughter to find this one. And so these two basically pretend to like each other in order to get the information that they need, and then they fall in love, and then it's like this whole thing. But that was Heartless Hunter, and I really liked it. It was really fun, very easy to follow in terms of plot. I highly recommend it. The second book is about to come out, I believe, in February, and I'm so excited, but I think that one's only a duology as well. So that was the first one in that series. Finally, I think this was actually my favorite book of last year, and I read it, well, I listened to it because it was on audiobook, but that was The Silent Patient, and I know I'm probably behind the times on this. It is not a new book by any means, but it was very new to me. A lot of times if I have an audiobook or something, I'm cleaning or I'm driving, I'm doing something and just kind of having it in my ears. And this one, I at one point just ended up sitting down and just kind of staring into space for a few hours while I finished it. It was so good, and I think that was my top book of last year. If you're unfamiliar with The Silent Patient, it's a psychological thriller, which normally is not my cup of tea. I think I really do like that genre, but I'm scared. But this one was very easy to digest. It was not scary in my opinion at all. But basically there is this woman who is an artist, and she is accused of murdering her husband. she actually can't even defend herself because she is silent. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't plead her case, is completely silent from like the moment basically right after the murder happens. Is told from the perspective of her therapist. And so the therapist at the very beginning talks about how basically he wants to come into the prison where she is and really figure out psychologically what's going on, what would cause her to be silent, what would cause her to not plead her case or to try to defend herself. And so it goes through his perspective of that journey, and it also gives inklings or like little perspectives from her diary throughout it. So it's like chronological from her in the beginning, and then it's also him in real time having sessions with her. So you kind of have like this juxtaposition of how he portrays her and then how she's writing, which is really neat. And I highly, highly, highly recommend the audiobook. It was told so well, and they had 2 different voice actors, or one for the psychiatrist and then one for the patient. So you had his and hers. It was just really good, and I loved it. And I have been, anytime I see it, if I'm around someone, I'm always saying, you've got to read The Silent Patient. It was so, so good. Okay, so those were my favorite books from 2024. And you'll kind of see some overlap with the ones that are going to be in my January TBR. So Iron Flame, this one was on my January TBR, and so I did finish it last night, so we are going to include it. But it's by Rebecca Yarros. Unless you've been living under a rock, this is the second one in the Fourth Wing series. Or I guess it's the Empyrean series. Anyway, it's the sequel to Iron Flame. It's the sequel to Fourth Wing. I'm not gonna lie, Iron Flame, I started it and then I was majority of the way through, and then I just like had to take a break from Dragonland. It was just a lot. I did enjoy it. I liked Fourth Wing better, but I was very excited with the ending of this. And so that brings me to my next one, which is going to be Onyx Storm, and that comes out in like 2 weeks, I think. But I have it pre-saved. I'm very excited. I will say Iron Flame, I felt very meaty in terms of like plot and the battle and a lot of pieces of it. So I'm very excited to see how Onyx Storm is. I'm hoping that it's a little bit more towards like Fourth Wing or somewhere in the middle. So very excited for that. But Onyx Storm is on my January TBR for sure. So I think I'll probably carry that into February since it comes out a little bit later. Right now, what I'm about to start reading, I already have my bookmark in it, but it is the sequel to One Dark Window, which is Two Twisted Crowns. I have not started it yet, but I am very excited to read it. Since this is only a duology, this is the last book in the series, but I can't wait. I think it'll be really fun, and I'm kind of on a fantasy kick right now. Okay, so finally for January TBR, which I think is gonna be pretty doable, and this is Wild Eyes. This is by Elsie Silver also, who also wrote Wild Love that we talked about earlier. And this is not a series, but it's one of those where it takes place in the same universe. It's Rose Hill. All takes place in the Rose Hill universe. Wild Love centers on Rosie and Ford, and this is about Rosie's brother. What is his name? Weston. So this is Weston's love story. I'm very excited to read it. I think it's gonna be a very easy kind of page turnery romance, but it'll be a nice little break between all of the romantacy and fantasy that I'm reading right now. So I'm very excited for this one. And ta-da, we made it through that. And I'm realizing as I'm recording this that I'm not the best at describing plots. So hopefully I get better at that, but I still love talking about the books nonetheless. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Feel free to subscribe and stick around if you want to see more and see me attempt to describe plots. This is really fun. This is different than what I'm used to doing. I absolutely loved it. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.